There was an issue that came up when we were moving to a new technology for our course evaluations, a new survey technology. Um, and I had to kind of bridge some gaps in order to make that technology work. And my solution was Power BI and the Power Suite. So the old tech, it was nice because it brought in data from SIS, from our Canvas. It had automated workflows, and it was an easier way to go through it, but it was very expensive. And honestly, it was only used by about half of our coordinators that were doing course evaluations that were facilitating it. So we weren't getting the full, bang for our buck. Other people, other coordinators were using things like Microsoft Forms and then getting results that way because they didn't want to use the tech that was kind of clunky and took a while to use. So we decided to move over to just like a general survey, enterprise survey level thing. So we went with SurveyMonkey because it's cheap and for enterprise level anyways. Um, but the problem is that it doesn't integrate any SIS. It doesn't integrate our colleague, our Canvas data. So bringing that data in for them to do course evaluations was going to be troublesome. Um, and it was because it wasn't really built for academics or course evaluations specifically. And SurveyMonkey is not super helpful and supportive of wanting to do that. So I was asked to come in, and SurveyMonkey does the work pretty well with Office 365 suite. It has like integrations and APIs that work with Power Automation and and Power BI. So what I ended up doing first, the first iteration of this was they would build their surveys and everything in the SurveyMonkey app, and then they'd create their link, and then they'd go to my Power BI that I created that has all the contacts, and they would create the contacts in that Power BI, export it. Then they would export that Power BI into a folder, which would trigger an automation to send out emails to everything in that file. You can see this is kind of a clunky iteration because you have to go through like several different apps back and forth. But at the time, it was all I could think of doing. Even the automation with like Power, I have a little bit of experience before this with automation, but I would say without Copilot, it would have been really difficult. Um, so we use that over the spring with some courses. Some coordinators decided not to use it. Some decided to use it. The other option was the SurveyMonkey contacts, which didn't really work very well. Um, and a lot of our emails for that were sent to spam, so we didn't get a lot of results. Um, so that was kind of the issues. Users would need to travel from one platform. I'd also have to create like multiple automations for each user because they'd have to use it on their own account. We couldn't customize any of the email content. We'd have to use standardized content in order for them to use it. And the link survey, because on the SurveyMonkey link URL, when you're doing a customized link, it has to have has to match essentially what they're making SurveyMonkey and with what they're sending out. So in order to do that, I had to kind of standardize it. And this was my original solution was this power. This is this is fake data. So you like take Falcon, Zoe, Argana, Leah, Spock. It's all. One of my favorite things for AI is creating fake data. uh, and what they would do is they select the term, they'd put their section numbers in here, and it would filter for their section numbers. Maybe I'm going to filter categories faculty. I go to section number. Now let's try it. Well, we'll just keep this one. Um, and then they would, if you look at the URL, they would have to go through and choose all these. They want to do it by these custom values and then start date. And then they would export this data into a contact list, which is if anybody, if you know, working with people who aren't Power BI, the export part of Power BI can be kind of tedious and difficult to use. So it was a lot of work to get that stuff to get that integrated with that. But so what I over summer I wanted to put it all into one place. So I developed a new iteration. They would still have to go through the SurveyMonkey and do all their work with that, but it also freed up their ability to they would create their content and sends from the dashboard instead, so they wouldn't need to export data from the Power BI. The Power BI would send the data straight to Power Automate. It builds historical for them. So the Power App, this is the nice part, is that I was able to have them be able to make custom content and actually store content for their apps. And it also created a historical record for them. So like when they sent something, I set it up so that if they sent out an email batch, it would create a record of when they sent it, how many they sent it to, the link and a link to the list of doing it. And all this kind of works directly on the Power BI piece of it. So the only time they ever have to leave Power BI is to confirm that they want to send the emails out. And I'll show you how that works. And this also allowed them to be able to set up reminders right away. So we are piloting this right now. Um, and it seems like it's going well so far. I mean, it's still emails for course evaluations, and so that's not the best way to get responses. Um, but first, I would develop the Power BI, then I develop the app, and then like concurrently you have to develop the automation as it's going on. Luckily, I had the automation like already developed from the first iteration, and it was just a matter of like kind of tweaking it in ways. But the Power App and same with the Power BI, but the Power App is the one that has the ability. So it turned out, so when you develop the Power BI, you want to develop your data set to send to the app, and I developed the data set. And then once you develop the data set, there's a Power App. I don't know if you can, it's kind of hard to see on this, but there's a Power App visualization icon. So if I have my table and I just duplicate another page, and I just click on my table and then I click on that app, it takes all that data and it puts it into this app. And what that does is it creates like a connection between an app and the Power BI. So once you do that, it's going to ask you if you need to choose an app, that's already created, or create a new app. I got stuck on this for a while because you have to do this on the web version. It doesn't work on the desktop version. So once you create your data, you have to go to the web version and then create the new app. And always create the new app first because it automatically sets up that integration between the app and the Power BI, which is I found really helpful when doing this. After well, so this is the development of the app. So the app development page kind of works like a canvas. It creates like a blank one for you, but then you can go through and kind of customize it how you want it ended up looking. On the left hand, and I'll walk you through the app as a use case. So on the left, you choose which your email content's going to be. On the right, you're going to have historical records. And so I kind of kept this method throughout the whole thing. On the left, you work on the right, there's some of your records. If you have used Power Apps before, it's a really interesting app product to use. It's pretty low code. If you're very good with Excel, it's probably a good translation over to the formula you use with Excel to Power Apps. Also, this guy named Shane Young on Power Apps 911, on YouTube, he has great videos and they're really interesting. So I used his videos a lot when I was learning how to do this. Before I did this, I made several apps or other uses like learning outcomes collection and things like that. And then the automation. So the automation is probably the most difficult part for me anyways, because the data comes in certain ways and then you have to format it. So first, the app triggers the automation when they hit the submission for the data. And then it creates the table data and it creates the email content. And all that data gets sent from the app to the Power Automate. And then you have to use Power Automate to kind of pull the variables that you want out of it, change the data formatting to an array, the data files created and saved to SharePoint, like all this stuff you kind of have to walk through and do it. And then at the very end, once the data is all changed and the way you want it to be, then you can start, going through each row and sending out emails, and you can use the app to actually go through each row and send an email out to all the data using the dynamic variables within that data. So you can, so this, what this did was is that when we created the survey URL for the Survey Monkey, that they could bring in dynamic variables into the survey responses like section and faculty name, so that when they went to do the analysis, they could start disaggregating by that stuff. It was kind of like a workaround besides connecting to the SIS and losing that connection to the SIS. It also, the way I set it up, it also interacts with the user through Teams, a chatbot. So, and I'll show you how that works in a second here. It's pretty neat. And then, so this is the app actually. So I've integrated it into the Power. I put it in here. So this is the new integration. So this is the old one I showed you, and it was just Power BI, and then the link, they had to create their link. This is the new one. You can see that it does the same kind of data. It doesn't really do anything else, but it's a lot simpler. I lost a lot of the survey link stuff because I didn't need it anymore because I could do that in the app. All it does is bring in the information that I need to put into the survey responses and then filter by those. So I'm going to, for the, there's 29 records or something here. I'm just going to pull in one right here. This is a neat little thing. It's a mass filter. So if you copy and paste numbers in here, it'll filter by those numbers. And then choosing the faculty you want to do it. So sometimes there's sections with like 30 faculty on them for our music and for our like fire technology classes. So they didn't want to send, that was an issue we had that we had to overcome in this iteration. So once they got their data all set up, they go to the next page, which is the app. And the app is integrated onto the dashboard already. You have over here, I wanted them to check the numbers that they were using so that when they were doing this, it's telling them how much they're sending out, right? I want them to be able to know, like, this is the number of records they're going to be sending, this is the number of faculty that they're going to be doing, and this is the number of sections that they're going to be doing. The one thing though that the app has is that there's 1,000 email limit. So if they have like, so I'm thinking of our life and our LHSS department, English department, and they just have tons of stuff that they send out. So they probably have to do their in batches, but it's so quick that it doesn't really make a difference because with this previously created content. You have the choice of either creating new content or using previously created content. On the right, you have the records of anything that I've sent out already. And you can see over here, these are all the dates that I sent out, the number of emails that I've sent. These are all test ones that I've done. Was it says the 23rd, right? So the last one I did right before this was it today. I sent one. It also provides a link to a data file that I created that the Power Automation creates to the so they can actually, the users can actually go in and look at, okay, so these are the records that I sent out, and there's an actual record of it. So if they create new content, it brings in to a create one. So everything works off a shared email address. So now we are using like a district-wide shared email address for course evaluations. But I'm going to use my shared email address. For our office, if I can. And then this is a reply to, so they can set up what email address that it gets replied to. It automatically goes to the user's email address. And you can see that as I make changes over here, you can see my sample email starts to change. So they can actually see what their email is going to look like as they're creating it and what they can say. Now, this is the tricky part. If you brought in a URL, I don't think I have this set up right now. So, but once they have their URL set up right, they can actually come over here and click this link, and it'll they can test it right there to see if it's working right. So before they send out emails, they can test their link to make sure that it's working and who it's from. it automatically defaults to the person, but it does that. So let me think. It looks like I got everything. The send date's today. I'm sending out one record, institutional research, and I hit submit. Now it's going to ask me if I want to do a reminder email, which would take me through the same thing, but I'm not going to. And you can see I have a new record down here, 723. I just sent out, and I got a notification that it was working. So this is my chat bot right here, and it says this one right here, my course evaluation has started. It's building the file for me that I just sent out, and now it's giving me a summary. It says this is the information in the email, the content. Do you want to send it out? And I hit yes. And it's going to do the automation again. And then it says I sent out my email, and I should get an email that was sent out. Let's see. Yep, there it is. That's the one I just sent out. So you come in and they can use this link. So it's pretty quick. It goes through very fast. The more emails you're sending out, the longer it takes, but because it goes through and checks each record in there, so it takes a little longer. But this was a nice little integration of using all three of those, but the users really only need to stay in the one place to use it. And then they can go back and like actually look at the records they set. Now, the previous email content, that's the one thing. So I also integrated this with SharePoint. So it creates SharePoint lists. Each time they submit things, it saves the content that they're using, and then they can reuse it. So instead of redoing the content over and over again, I think it's this, which one, 723 would be the one that I just sent out. So this one is the one I just sent out. I can just click it and it's going to create that email for me again. I can put the link in again and then change the date that I want to send it on and hit submit. Now that what's going to happen now is it's going to go through the same workflow, but since I put the date on there, it's going to, and there's a delay in the email, so it's going to delay sending out those emails until that date that I just sent. So it's going to go through the same automation, and then it's going to delay sending out the yes, and it's going to send out. So, anyways, um, so that's how it works for the automation. Pretty interesting. It took so a lot of things to learn how to do that, but other possible uses for this integration. So like this is just one thing that you could use it for. I was thinking one of the there's a lot of learning behind this, but this also opens up opportunities for doing other things. I'm thinking about using something like this for our strategic planning, where we collect data from our district office services and then have it work through a planner automation through that. Um, you could also, the nice thing about the Power Apps is that it also talks to your data source. So if you have a premium, I'll go over that, you can actually connect it to SQL Server if you're using SQL Server, and it can read and write from SQL Server. And then you can use what if scenarios by building up new tables for scheduling. Um, you can use it for collecting. I remember I've used Power Apps before when we were in COVID and we needed to collect evidence for accreditation, and we need to align it to the strategic plan. So I built that in Power Apps where they would go in and put in their evidence, and then it would automatically align it to the strategic plan. Slows assessment. They didn't one time I built a Power App for as a user for collecting data for learning outcomes for student services because the technology we were using was more academically focused and pretty clunky for student services. So there's lots of different ways that you can think of doing this and using these kind of integrations. Um, Now, there are quite a few obstacles in order for using these integrations. For like SQL Server, there's quite a few things that you need premium subscription for it, um, which can be problematic if you want to do that. Um, there's also moving to Fabric. I'm not sure how because we right now we are on a premium service, but they're getting rid of the premium service that we have, and they're moving everybody to Fabric. But but instead of moving to Fabric, but we're thinking of just buying everybody pro licenses, and I'm not sure how that's going to affect doing this. Um, so any kind of sharing this kind of data requires security and privacy, right? So the nice thing about this is that if you're working within SharePoint, you can manage the security and permissions within the SharePoint itself of who has access to it, who has the right access, who has view access to it. So like on the one that I showed you earlier where it shows history, it has row level, it only shows history of the people that are using the app at that time. It won't show. So if like someone else was sending emails and I was sending emails, it won't show both of them. It just shows the one person's. And then Power Apps, one of the biggest issues with Power Apps that I found and Power Automate is that there's often limits on the data that you can send and do things with. Power Apps has delegation limits with certain data sources that you can use. So you can only use like 2,000 rows or 1,000 rows sometimes, um, which can be when you're using a lot of data, it can be really difficult to come over to overcome that. There's different ways you can overcome it by like batching different iterations, and it's just but it can be difficult with that. So learning that was one of the things when I was doing the integration for Power Automate. I was also like I was often stress testing everything, like sending out 10,000 emails to see if it would go out or to, what would what's the limitations that I could do. Um, and so it's a process. That's one of the reasons why we're piloting it right now too. And yeah, we were the pilot. So we're doing this integration with summer, we're piloting it with some summer sections to see, what our responses are. Um, Email for evaluation and course evaluations is definitely, or any kind of survey response is definitely the least, that you can get. Sometimes it's our only option. We're also looking at using QR codes in the sections and seeing how that works. But that also comes with faculty collaboration and different over obstacles to overcome that way too. Um, so my next steps for this is like, so I've built one for the student emails. Now I want to build a reminder for faculty. So like in the old one, they could also send a reminder to faculty that we're getting. So I want to set it up so it also sends faculty email reminders. So it's like, hey, you were starting your survey, your course evaluation for these sections. The survey just went out. Can you remind your students to go on and look for the email and fill out the survey? Um, I mean, integrating with Canvas would be amazing, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And Colleague would be really cool too, but I don't think that's going to Lucia. That's never going to happen. So this is kind of just my way of working around those issues. And then the other thing that I really want to do, and I know how to do it already, but there's issues with privacy of responses for confidentiality for course evals, which would be typing responses into a Power BI report so that the users can just go in and download the reports because the reports that come out of SurveyMonkey are kind of difficult to get at, and at the level that they're doing it, it doesn't really work super well. So I really like to put it into a Power BI, and the nice thing is SurveyMonkey does integrate in that way with the automation to pipe it into Power BI. So any questions for you? I guess I'm at the end of my presentation. I talked a lot. There's a lot of information going on there. I know that like there's a lot of coding behind a lot of these Power Apps and how they work and stuff. And it's taken me, I've been working with Power Apps since 2018, here and there. And this is my first time actually like because at my old when I was using it before, we were a Tableau institution with 365, so the two things didn't work together. So now it's like my first time actually integrating our visualization software with it, and it's been really neat just figuring out where you could go with it. So yeah, any questions?
I do have a question, Steven.
Sure.
I have a question for the Power BI app limitations, and each workspace can only produce one Power Apps, right? Is
It
it?
depends. Yeah, and that's kind of the idea with the premium membership. If you have status right now, and you have to look at your subscription of what you have. Since we have a premium membership for that, I'm allowed to make, we're allowed to make more, and then you could share it
But
on
you
the
have a
Power BI.
fabric content to create it, like a diamond or bronze things to create it. Is that how you creating Power Apps?
Yeah, let me show you. I'm not, and again, like this is
Yeah. Actually,
they,
my like a continuous question. When you
uh
set it up RLS, let's say you create this program evaluation or the email chains only should be seen by, let's say, HR or only seen by academic affairs.
mhm.
Rest shouldn't see that. When you set it up RLS, are you using one workspace for just for this project or
So
how you
every
go?
so any of the emails, like the content for like the not, any of the responses comes back, that stays in SurveyMonkey. So that confidentiality with any of the responses of the faculty stays within the coordinators. It doesn't go to me, it doesn't go anywhere else. But this is strictly like the students that are the student contact information that's being shared. And this is all in a one SharePoint workspace that I control with the permissions of who actually goes in there. So only the coordinators and myself actually can go in there and do that. And it all
I got it. I got it.
so as far as like creating the apps, I'm not sure if you can make if you, it depends on like again what level of subscription you have. But you can create the apps, but let me show you kind of this is the course eval app. Um, let's see. Oh, I didn't hit the edit piece, did I? No, I did. Okay, good. So like here, this is the Power BI integration with that app. That's how you know it's doing it. But let's say I want to connect it to data sources. Um, and let's like SQL Server or something. So the little diamond for premium, there's some certain things that you need premium in order to connect to. Um, for SharePoint though, you don't need premium for that to do SharePoint and such, and then you can manage the access to those lists with the SharePoint permissions. Um, so that's how I do this courses. So nothing goes into those lists that is PI. They all stay private, but they and it all stays within the coordinators that have access to that data anyways.
I got it. Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Mhm. Very, very careful with that. I mean, this is something that like we kind of there's a lot of disagreement of what can be shared as far as like with me. My thing is if it's course evals, I don't see any responses. I'm not on their SurveyMonkey workspaces, so that anything that comes into their responses, they're the only ones that they can see for that.
Thanks for the awesome presentation, Stephen. I
Well,
have a
sorry.
question.
Sure.
I have a question as well. I have two, but I'll start with one and then I'll leave an
Sure.
opportunity for others to ask as well. But so I know you talked about coding with Power Apps. So I personally, I don't have any experience with working in Power Apps and developing one, but I'm just curious to get a sense of like how, when you say that, like to what degree do you need coding? It sounded like you needed a notable amount, but I was trying to
Um,
just, I want to see if maybe you can give us a sense of like how,
Yeah, definitely. It really
yeah,
depends on how customized you make it, and it's definitely like a learning curve as far as doing this. So like this, so a lot of that automation lasts with this one button, this submit button, right? This does a lot of the work. So like I have several different things going through this submit button. Um, when somebody selects it, So this is the coding behind it. So this is pulling in, this is sending all the data to Power Automation. This is creating that email content. This one's creating those saved records, and it's patching that information, and it's just recording all that information. So there is coding. This is probably like the highest coding in the app for anything, but you can copy and paste this stuff in order to get it to go faster. I would say the Power Automation was probably it's probably overdone, honestly. Like I probably have steps in here that I don't need anymore. And I have it like I am too scared to go through and clean it up because I don't want it to break. Um, but yeah, this one probably has the most coding in it. So the trigger here is that Power Apps, and it brings in all that information. And so like the data and everything, and then it brings in, and then it starts manipulating that data, creating the file, working in that SharePoint that I was talking about. Everything connects to that one SharePoint. Um, and you gotta make sure everybody has the right permissions, because like if let's say I have the right group, I have the right permissions for the shared everything, it wouldn't work. So there's a little bit behind that, and you see a lot of this is like creating these different variables and things. I don't, and then you have like these checks that go through. Probably one of the highest ones is these codes for the bots or these things. It's a JSON code. Honestly, AI helps with that a lot. So that's not super difficult. And then this one is the coding for going through like to bring in the stuff for the email that goes out. So I mean, there's a lot of I've probably tested this like 100 times over and over and over again, trying to get it to how I need it. So there is a lot of like back and forth for it. So yeah, I would say if Power Apps is a really cool start. You can make a really simple Power App pretty quickly. Um, you would just need to. One of the things I suggest is going through that guy's. It was a Shane Young Power. He where was it? Way up here. Okay, so this guy right here, YouTube University, but I've done a lot of YouTube to learn things, and this guy is definitely the best one that I've seen for this for anything really Power Suite. Is really really clear, has very good concepts that they go through, and it's just super easy to get through. So if you're looking at doing anything, learning anything about the Power Suite, then I don't know, that's a good spot to start.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Any questions? I've seen this used one we've used it. I haven't used it, but we had a consultant that was working with our facilities department building utilities apps for dashboards, and they use Power App as a way to collect data into that, which I thought was really neat. Um, and they connected everything to the SQL database, so they could actually edit. They create a separate SQL table that edits through the Power App and stuff. Well, it was really neat to see how that worked. Well, any questions? I know that's a lot. It's a ton of stuff for something like this, but just I guess the thing is go around, go in and start playing with it. I think that's the easiest way to get started.
Nice. Actually, I do have another question. I know one of the things you mentioned as it relates to Power Apps was the security measures to be mindful of. And so as you were presenting, I was thinking like, there's key components. There's the, there's a Power App component. There's the Power BI component. But I guess within that, like what were security measures? Because I know you mentioned that, but like what were additional security measures you had to be mindful of, even at this stage, like through that whole process? Would be curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think first is like looking at the kind of data that you're sending and stuff through that app. So the majority of the time when you're doing something like this, I wouldn't be sending. This does send student data, but my first stop, you know, testing this was just using data made in the app and then sending it to like a source. So that's not privacy data. Um, but I would also talk to IT, your IT with your power, if you have Office 365 to kind of look at, their security um, concerns about maybe using it. Uh, but I think one of the things that I don't know how the share going through secure when you create a SharePoint, there's security permissions that you can go through, and it depends on your level your user level in order to create and develop those security permissions. And you can go through that SharePoint and start there and look at this. These are the only people that have access to it within our organization. Um, so that's where I would start. But yeah, it's always an issue with security to be really careful with that, right? So I feel like the way that I've set it up is only giving access to those that use it, and if somebody out there who doesn't use it and who's not part of those groups, then it doesn't work for them.
Got it. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. The other questions? Just wanted to check in one last time before we shift gears. Doesn't look like it, but yeah, big thanks, Stephen, for the awesome presentation. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And I think you mentioned it, something about even sharing the code. And I trust you'd be okay with people reaching out to you
Yeah,
if they have any more
definitely.
questions, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, the Power Apps is an interesting. There's so many use cases that you could have for something like that. The issue with IR is that we're often working with lots of data, and the majority of apps I make don't connect to our data at all. It's just within SharePoint, within the Office 365 itself. It's using only Office 365. So like another one would be like if you were making a planner and you had with your teams, you had planner connected, and that they could do all the planning and development for their goals and objectives within an app, and that gets aligned with what they're doing in planner, and then the automation sends emails out to who's responsible for those goals and objectives if you're doing strategic planning. So there's just a little, if keep it in Office 365 first, and then and then venture out if you feeling brave for it.
Nice. No, thank you for that. Yeah, thanks again, and for your awesome presentation. Emil, we see you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, Steve. Thank you. That's like really impressive. I wanted to kind of ask, like I know a lot of times we can develop like a cool solution, but then it's like, how does this being used? So can you share a little bit about how like that was taken by the audience who like the people who are actually using the solution? Like if you had any kind of troubles, whatnot.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the first iteration, yeah, definitely had troubles because you have different levels of people that have experience using any kind of those apps, even at a surface level, not like the permanently level, right? So just the ability to export data into their from a table into an Excel file can be troublesome, right? And then working with teams. And then there's a security part because like I feel comfortable with the SharePoint securities that I've set up, but explaining that to people can be kind of difficult. So yeah, the first one was difficult. When I started bringing up all the different ways that they had to interact with different things, it was it was not looked at. I walked the majority of the time when we did this, I'd walk people through using it every time. Not every time, well, the first times they'd use it. I had a few people that ran with it, that they just, they really know they really got it and then they went and used it. Um, that's why we're doing the pilot right now too. So I'm only working with a couple people right now to really see what their thoughts are and using it, and so far they've liked it. Um, the bringing it all into one space has really been really helpful. Because then now they don't have to like remember, oh, now I got to go to Teams and do this. Oh, now I got to go do this. I have to match my survey link with this, and it was the flow worked in the old one, but it was just not super easy to do. Yeah, so I think just I one of the biggest things probably is I've developed with the users. I've developed a really good relationship with them. Um, our coordinators for our evaluations and our schedules and stuff, they have very varied personalities, but you work with them and you're in their trust, and it makes it a lot easier to hey, you want to try this now? It makes it a lot easier to bring that up. Yeah.
Thank you. I
Great,
appreciate
thanks
it.
for that.
Mhm.
All right, well, with that, we'll go ahead. Thanks again, Stephen. We'll go ahead and shift gears. And one of the things we've been trying to integrate actually during our time during these Power BI convenings is office hours. And really, the gist with that has been really a time for attendees to ask any questions or to bring up any topics or even anything that you're working through that you're either experiencing challenges and you'd want to brainstorm with others. This is an opportunity for us to do, to think through things collaboratively and collectively. But with that, we can shift gears to that. And one of the things we could start with is I know Alan brought up a question in the chat, and I'll go ahead and read off the main points of what he said. But Alan, you're welcome to come off mute as well and elaborate more. And so, based on Stephen's presentation, Alan says, so your generation of synthetic test data brings up the idea of using Cloud Code with Power BI MCP. The problem is privacy, but with fake data that is solved, or is it question mark? And so here's the key question. How do people feel and what are your policies on sharing database structures with AI? Has anyone done this? And so just something to open up to the group. And, part of me even thinks of even data modeling too. So data modeling structures within Power BI and, sharing that with AI as well. So any thoughts, interactions with that? Would love to hear people's thoughts. And again, Alan, you're welcome to come off mute and elaborate more.
Yeah, so I'm using Claude Code to help me write Power BI, but it's quite tedious in terms of, it's helping me write DAX, but essentially, I'm doing all the typing. And, one way around that is to create an environment that's, where it can actually write the DAX. And so I thought of this scheme where you could just have all synthetic data, but you are sharing basically your database structures with, um, you know, with their servers. And so is that a privacy concern? And also a security concern in terms of just having any outside knowledge of how things work internally. Yeah. So I'm curious, has anyone else dealt with these issues?
I think I think it also comes to the AI that you're using and whether or not it's organizational AI. Like so a lot of stuff I use is within the organization. And I talk, having conversations with IT about it because I don't know anything how AI works, right? As far as like the background, reading the documentation of the security behind what that is, what data that it's looking at. But yeah, I get it. I think creating the fake data is um, really helpful for me because when like they're pretty generic tables a lot of the time that I'm creating, like course, section, student. Um, but yeah, I can see where that would be a concern. That I don't work with any AI that hasn't been approved by our IT. Um, I've never, I've never used Claude really because of that. We don't have an IT. We use Claude.
This won't help you at all, Alan, but just to share from another district, I'm in the Los Rios Community College District, and I haven't checked recently. I don't think it's changed, but most of our AI integrations are turned off. So I'm not able to experiment with them. I have in the past given, this doesn't get around your typing thing, but my co-pilot thinks that I work for a Coca-Cola company. Obviously it doesn't. It knows where I work, but I have a whole scheme that I've fed it before that is for a factory that closely mirrors what I need here, just out of, caution. So that's another option, is to use a similar structure, but different function.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know. I want to say it's ChatGPT already knows internal database structures for colleague. Like the way it answers your questions, it's clear it already understands quite a bit about what is going on, under the hood. So yeah.
I feel like a lot of this information, like database structures, like you mentioned, already exist out there because, during the creation of LLMs, they scoured the web, they went through like all the publicly available documentation. So I feel like they have a pretty good handle on like what fields can potentially exist, what tables can potentially exist, what the relationship between those tables are, and some of it can be inferred, right? I mean, we generally work with the same kind of structure of the data of like classes, students, enrollments, and whatnot. And you can always, I feel like if you create in a synthetic data set, you can always go to an extra step of sort of anonymizing the structure by just using your own, because you can rename the name of the columns and stuff. So it goes into the meaning rather than the actual structure of the real database that exists on the back end. And I feel like it does help a lot, when you try to use that, because again, you're not feeding any real data, you're not feeding necessarily the structure of database. What you're looking for is because to me, it's the AI is the kind of quickest way or fastest way and the most efficient way to find the solution. And it's not always going to come up with the right solution, but it can give you a number of options to choose from, right? So you can, and it's always an interactive process. You go through, you're trying to solve a particular task, you provide some input, you come up with some output, you evaluate this output and see if it fits your requirements or not, and then you adjust and keep going working with that. So I think it's just like, I mean, it's essentially the same process as if you would be doing like Googling on the web, going through like Stack Overflow, going through YouTube videos, and trying to solve the problem kind of the old way, the old-fashioned way. But I think it's definitely less effective, less efficient.
So that they could, because they won't let it, like, they showed us like when they hover over the student ID, it does like a little circle with the through it as if you can't touch it. And then
not even as the
that's what it sounded like. And
okay.
our
So, Alan, I think there's a background noise coming from yours. Right now.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
well, he said, well,
Yeah, one last thing I'll add is, thanks for the important point you brought up, Alan. And, definitely, I think as being on this AI journey and, as we're integrating it and utilizing it to different degrees, I think I'm realizing more and more just the importance of just proceeding with caution and, ethical considerations as well. As I dig more into it, like I'm realizing the value of asking questions like the one you're asking right now. And I think and those questions are going to continue to arise too, as we integrate it more, as we utilize it more. And so all that to say, I don't have an answer for you, but I think you're on the right track asking that question. And I think it's fair to say, because we're called to be, responsible data stewards, just to, proceed, like to default to the side of like, just proceed with caution. In other words, your point is valid. Do we want to ask AI questions as it relates to, database structures, base table names? I've had a similar thought as well with like, working on code on AI and like base table names. It's like, to what degree, like, should it even know that? But yeah, again, we can continue processing this together in community for sure. Yeah. So thank you for that important question. But I do want to be mindful of our time. With that, we have a few announcements. I'm going to pass it over to Katie. And so we'll do that now. Katie, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jaime. Thanks, Stephen, for the presentation. Thank you all for your engagement. Just to wrap up, a few quick reminders. I put in the chat at the beginning and end of the chat a link to our Google site. That's where you can find all the information about future presentations, including registration links, which we also send out via email. And there's even a link for those of you who heard about us on the RP group listserv, we have our own listserv for Power BI related questions and content. So there's a link for joining that on that website as well. And finally, on the events page, we also have a survey. If you are someone who has a potential presentation for us, or you know of someone who has a potential presentation, feel free to fill out that survey with the type of presentation. All presentations are valuable. Don't feel like we're vetting the presentations. It's just to get an idea of about how long and what type of content you're thinking about. We could really use volunteers for this. So please consider filling out that survey or just reaching out to the three of us by email. Our emails are on that website. And the last thing on that events page is all of our previous recordings are hosted on YouTube, and there's a link to that playlist on the events page as well. If you would like to get involved with helping the three of us kind of host these convenings or making this community a little bit more robust, please feel free to reach out to us. We are just doing this on our own time, and usually one or more than one of us has something going on at any given time. So we could certainly use fresh help, fresh ideas. Feel free to get involved. We would love to have you. with that, I think we can wrap up. Thank you for joining us, and please feel free to reach out either to the Power BI listserv or to the three of us with any questions or comments for the community.